Welcome to Monsters, Maybe, the podcast, the official deep dive companion to Wilson H. Bard's Monsters Maybe series. Each episode, two voices sit down to pick apart one book or one big idea from the world of Wall-E, Medusa, and the monsters who might not be monsters at all. Before we get into it, two quick things. First, the voices you're about to hear in this discussion are AI generated, built to walk through the Monsters Maybe world in conversation form. Second, this is a full spoiler discussion. We cover complete plot details, twists, and endings from across the Monsters Maybe series. If you haven't read the books yet, consider this your spoiler warning.
Usually, when you look at an architectural blueprint, there is this underlying expectation of perfect logic.
Right, like basic engineering.
Exactly. If you want to build a house, the blueprint shows you the load-bearing walls, the foundation, the pitch of the roof. The architect points at the paper and basically says, there it is. That structure is what will keep the elements out.
It's highly rational. Every single line serves a functional purpose designed to withstand external pressure.
Yeah, but then you step into the world of absolute power, specifically the world of a paranoid autocrat. And suddenly that entire architectural logic is just completely inverted.
Oh, totally inverted.
We are looking at a structural landscape designed obsessively to keep the occupants safe. But the very walls they built to protect themselves are, well, they're exactly what end up crushing them.
It is the tyrant's dilemma made physical. I mean, it's the absolute definition of self-destructing architecture. Because when you build a fortress out of fear, you aren't actually keeping the world out. You're locking yourself in with your own paranoia.
Exactly. So welcome to this custom-tailored deep dive. We are so thrilled to have you with us today. We know you are, like that insanely curious learner.
The kind of person who wants the real, profound aha moments without, drowning in useless information overload.
Right. You want to understand the mechanics of the world, whether real or imagined. And today's mission is exactly that. We are doing a forensic exploration into the anatomy of a tyrant's downfall.
And we're doing it through a truly magnificent fantasy narrative. We're looking at excerpts and source notes from Wilson H. Bard's A Crown of Dust and Shadow.
That's incredible.
It really is. It serves as a masterclass in how absolute paranoia actively constructs the exact machinery of its own destruction. We aren't just talking about a villain making a mistake here. We're talking about an entire sociological ecosystem of fear.
Yeah, and we are going to get into the clash between ancient gods and brand new royal decrees. We're going to look at the surprisingly comedic reality of divine intervention and how an 8-foot minotaur hiding in a basement managed to build a functional revolution entirely out of discarded people.
It is quite the resume for a minotaur.
Seriously. But before we get to the basement, I need to set the stage for you. We are in the mythic city of Knossos. A king named Minos has seized control. And he hasn't just declared himself king, he has declared himself a living god, the direct son of Zeus.
Right, and he is ruling through a suffocating absolute terror.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the true heir to the throne, a quiet, bookish boy named Ephonios, or Eppo, is living in secret across the sea in a place called Pelagon's Retreat.
It is a massive powder keg of a setting. I mean, you have a false god demanding literal worship sitting on a stolen throne, while the true king is across the ocean delivering bread, completely unaware of his destiny.
Delivering bread, I know.
But to understand how this powder keg explodes, we really have to understand how the pressure was built in the first place.
Okay, let's unpack this. I want to start with the atmosphere in Knossos, because King Minos hasn't just taken over a city's government. When I read these sources, it felt like he was trying to overwrite reality itself.
Oh, absolutely.
He fired the old royal guard, the ones who had actual ties to the community, and he replaced them with this terrifying new elite unit called the 12.
Right, and the 12 are a fascinating study in the aesthetics of totalitarianism. Their uniform isn't just armor, it's a psychological weapon.
Yeah.
They wear pitch black armor, but hammered across every breastplate is a single, jagged, bright bronze lightning bolt.
Which is such a massive flex. But, I'm hung up on this part. Why the lightning bolt? If you have absolute military power, why do you need to dress your soldiers up like mythological cosplayers?
It's a great question.
What is the functional purpose of that aesthetic?
Well, think about the psychology of visual repetition in authoritarian regimes throughout human history. When Minos puts that lightning bolt on his enforcers, he is weaponizing mythology.
Oh, wow.
He's legally mandating his own origin story. He's claiming he was born of a thunderclap. that he is the direct offspring of Zeus.
Right.
By forcing the populace to look at that symbol every single time they see an authority figure, he is forcing them to visually swallow his lie. It's a constant, inescapable reminder that his power isn't just political. He claims it is divine.
And it's not just how they look, it's the sound. The text goes out of its way to describe how it's such the 12 march. It describes them as a 12-legged beast,
Yes.
6 pairs of guards, 2 abreast, striking the stone ground exactly twice a second. They don't clatter or chat like normal soldiers on patrol. It is a synchronized, machined heartbeat.
It's chilling.
But again, I have to push back here. Isn't that counterproductive? Like, if you want to catch dissidents, shouldn't your secret police be, secret? Why announce your presence with a perfectly timed drum beat?
Because catching dissidents isn't the primary goal. Preventing the mere thought of dissent is the goal. The terror is the point. When you hear that synchronized heartbeat twice a second, you know exactly what is coming. It creates a Pavlovian response of dread. There is a deeply illustrative detail in the text regarding a horse trader in the market that proves this point perfectly.
Oh, the horse trader, yeah. That scene was incredibly disturbing.
Every single morning at the exact same time, the 12 march down the market lane and they stop right in front of this trader's stall. They don't speak to him. They don't demand a bribe or inspect his wares.
Right.
They simply stand there in perfect silence until the trader's sweet gray mare, Bess, begins to physically shake with terror.
They literally just stand there to terrify an old horse. It felt so petty to me when I first read it. I thought, you are the elite guard of a god king. Don't you have better things to do than bully livestock?
It sounds petty, sure. But look at the sociological impact of that act. As the horse trader points out to another character later, the guards do this to prove that they can frighten whatever they please, whenever they please. And there is absolutely nothing in the law or the heavens to stop them. They are demonstrating complete impunity. If they can make a massive animal shake just by standing near it, what hope does a baker or a blacksmith have?
Not at all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This tactic creates a self-policing populace. The text notes that the market goes completely silent in a wave before the guards even arrive. The fear travels faster than the boots.
That makes me think of modern corporate or political rebranding. You see dictators rebrand the entire aesthetic of a nation, putting their face on every billboard, renaming the cities after themselves.
Yeah, we see that all the time.
In Minos' case, he has ordered his face stamped on every single coin, down to the children's half oboe. There's a coppersmith who complains that he melts the coins down by the bucket load and still can't escape Minos' glaring face.
It's everywhere.
It's designed to force compliance before a single word is spoken. But honestly, when I look at all this, the lightning bolts, the marching, the coins, it makes me wonder, is this outward display of absolute power actually a symptom of profound, desperate weakness?
That is the crucial insight. It absolutely is. Minos demands to be addressed as your divinity. He has literally erased his own human mother from his official history to claim he was born from a storm.
Which is insane.
When you have to pass laws mandating that people believe you are a god, it means, deep in your marrow that you are incredibly fragile. A true god doesn't need to pass legislation to make you believe in thunder. The thunder just happens.
Right, the thunder doesn't need a PR team.
Exactly. Minos' loud claim to godhood is a direct inverse of his actual security.
Which brings us to the most brilliant irony of Minos' entire setup. He is projecting this massive, godlike surveillance state above ground in the daylight, but he has completely, utterly ignored what is happening beneath his own feet. Which leads us to Wally.
Wally, the beast of the labyrinth.
So Beast is doing a lot of heavy lifting there, because Wally is a complete subversion of the monster troupe. We are introduced to an 8-foot-tall minotaur who wears a feather boa, faints at the sight of actual blood, and stages fake executions for the king using sunberry jam.
Wally is a phenomenal character. Minos hired him 6 years prior to be this terrifying creature lurking in the dark, reasoning that fear is cheaper than love for holding on to a throne.
Classic tyrant logic.
The public believes Minos throws his enemies into the maze to be devoured. But Wally is an artist at heart. He's a pacifist. He considers himself a theatrical impresario. And most importantly, for our deep dive into the architecture of Downfall, Wally is a master architect.
I love the description of his dressing room down in the maze. He's sitting on a Victorian love seat, which he casually mentions was terribly expensive, but totally worth it for his back.
Naturally.
And he's surrounded by wooden mannequins leaking jam. He's applying thick theatrical makeup so his expression reads from the back of the room, even though he operates entirely in a basement where almost no one sees him.
But he isn't just in any basement. Wally designed the labyrinth himself. And because he's an architect with a highly refined ear for acoustics, he ensured that his personal dressing room sits directly beneath the great gold throne room of Knossos.
Ah, right.
There is an old rusted iron grate from a non-existing kitchen right above him. It acts as a perfect, unintentional acoustic funnel. The architecture itself turns Wally into the ultimate secret listener. He can hear every word, every whispered plot, every footfall of the king.
It's like the architectural version of a digital footprint. Minos is up there in his gilded throne room, believing he is in this impenetrable, private, secure space, orchestrating his atrocities with total impunity.
But the walls are listening.
Exactly. The very architecture of his palace, the structure he thinks keeps him safe, is actively recording him. Every terrible thing he says is funneling straight down to a Minotaur with a surprisingly strong moral compass.
And his hidden observation post leads to the narrative turning point. Wally is down there listening when Minos' young, eager spy, a page named Beaks, comes hopping into the throne room.
Ugh, Beaks.
Yeah. Beaks has been eavesdropping in the lower passages, trying to climb the ladder of the king's favor, and he brings Minos a name, Remus.
Remus. For those following the family tree, Remus is Eppo's older brother. The brilliant, clever alchemist who stayed behind in Knossos, hiding in plain sight in a high tower, conducting unauthorized experiments.
Beaks delivers this name with immense pride. He's expecting to be lavishly praised for finding a massive threat to the throne. He tells Minos that the common people are whispering about royal blood, about the old families quietly rallying to this clever apprentice in the tower.
Right.
And down in the basement, Wally freezes. Because Wally knows exactly who Remus is. Wally helped Eppo escape years ago.
I found Minos' reaction here to be the most chilling part of the entire text so far. He doesn't fly into a screaming rage. He doesn't panic. He just sort of turns the name over in his mouth and casually says, "Doesn't ring a bell."
It is a profound tragedy of asymmetrical awareness. Think about it. Across the sea, Eppo is pouring tea every morning, speaking of his brother Remus in the present tense, keeping him alive in his heart, hoping to see him again.
Yeah.
And here, Minos dismisses a human life with utter administrative boredom. He calls Remus a tower rat. He chuckles at the very idea of him being a threat. And then, casually, as if he were ordering a second cup of wine, he tells the captain of his guards, Lucian, to burn the tower down that night and make it look like an accident.
Make it a permanent one, he says. Just brutal. But I have a question here. Wally has been down in this basement for 6 years. He has heard Minos order terrible things before. He fakes the deaths with sunberry jam and sneaks the victims out the back door.
Right.
Why does this specific order, the burning of Remus's tower, shift the power balance in the palace? Why is this the breaking point for Wally?
Because it forces Wally to confront the limits of passive complicity. For 6 years, Wally has justified his role by telling himself he is a savior. He fakes the deaths, yes, but he never takes an active stand against the system causing them.
He's just treating the symptoms, not the disease.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But hearing Minos extinguish a vibrant life so casually, a life belonging to the brother of a boy Wally personally saved, it shatters Wally's rationalization. He realizes that sneaking people out the back door doesn't stop the king from throwing more people into the front door. The cruelty is infinite. Wally realizes that observing in secret is no longer enough. His hidden knowledge demands action.
So Wally decides he can't just be the curtain anymore. He has to change the play. But before Wally's underground revolution truly kicks into high gear, the narrative shifts to show us how Minos is actively alienating his spiritual power base, not just his physical one.
Yes, the religious dynamic.
We really need to talk about the theological conflict between the old gods and these new royal decrees. It's such a huge part of this world.
This is a phenomenal clash of paradigms. We see Minos attempt to completely overwrite the spiritual reality of Knossos. He summons Hagatha, the high priestess of the Temple of Rhea.
Right, and just to give some context, Rhea is an ancient earth goddess, literally the mother of the gods. And Minos summons her high priestess to the throne room. He demands that Hagatha tear down her temple's old dedications and remake the entire place to honor Minos and Zeus within 7 days, in time for what he is calling the Festival of the Ascension.
The arrogance is stunning.
He wants to evict the old gods to make room for his own ego.
And Hagatha's response is an absolute masterclass in dealing with a malignant narcissist. She is engaging in asymmetrical warfare against autocracy. She doesn't yell. She doesn't refuse his decree outright. She comes shuffling into this massive, terrifying throne room, playing the role of a doddering, half-deaf, entirely harmless old woman.
Her linguistic choices are amazing here. She looks up and gasps at the gilding on the ceiling, asking who's going to see it up there besides the pigeons.
Which is a brilliant, subtle dig at his vanity. By calling it gilding, she is implicitly pointing out that it isn't solid gold. It's a thin, fake layer over common stone, just like his claim to godhood.
I didn't even catch that the first time. And then she fumbles his title. She calls him Highness, then Eminence, forcing him to angrily correct her to divinity. But I have to ask, if Minos is so terrifying, if his 12 can make horses shake with fear, why doesn't he just execute her for being disrespectful? How does playing the fool actually work against a dictator?
It works because narcissism desperately requires an audience, and it requires validation. Minos wants the spiritual legitimacy that Hagatha provides. To execute a harmless, shuffling old lady shatters his illusion of majestic strength. It would make him look incredibly small and petty.
Oh, that makes sense.
By playing the fool, Hagatha denies him a worthy adversary. He accepts her fumbling performance as genuine, pathetic reverence because his ego cannot fathom that an old woman is intellectually running circles around him.
Wally is listening to this entire exchange through his grate, and he calls it theological vandalism.
Why?
Minos is telling Hagatha that the Temple of Rhea is tired and honors small gods. He wants it dedicated to Zeus because Zeus is his father, but as you pointed out, Rhea is Zeus's mother. Minos is proposing to evict the Thunderer's own mother from her house to honor the Thunderer, and he has absolutely no idea how insulting that is to the cosmos.
The arrogance completely blinds him to basic mythology. He's trying to edit a religion he doesn't even understand, and Hagatha just plays right into his blindness. She bows her creaking joints and agrees that they are just so lucky to have a god they can actually touch.
So sarcastic.
She lays the flattery on so thick, but it's completely hollow. Her outward obedience completely masks her intent to protect the old order.
She is a survivor.
Exactly. She knows that institutional power doesn't survive a tyrant by fighting him head-on in his own throne room where he has all the swords. It survives by appearing compliant, fading into the background, while quietly preparing the ground for his replacement.
The moment that proves she is completely in control of her faculties happens as she is leaving. She shuffles past the east wall where Jorgen, the silent legendary guard, is standing at attention, and for just a split second, she drops the doddering old woman act entirely.
I love this part.
She looks at him with sharp, clear eyes and whispers, "Mind that dust, dear. It does catch so." Because earlier in the scene, Jorgen had disguised a laugh at her jokes as a cough and blamed it on the dust from the ceiling. Hagatha didn't miss a single thing.
It's a wonderful reveal. It perfectly contrasts the fading, quiet, yet deeply observant influence of true divinity represented by Rhea and Hagatha with Minos' loud, desperate, oblivious claim to godhood. Minos makes noise. Hagatha pays attention.
And later, when Hagatha finally meets Eppo down in the secret tunnels, she drops a massive truth bomb on him. She reveals that Rhea's hand was secretly guiding Eppo all along. The old gods weren't dead, they were just quietly moving their pieces across the board, saving the true heir from the royal rot.
Which reinforces the theme. True power doesn't need to put its face on a coin or yell its titles from a throne. It operates structurally.
But the hubris of Minos doesn't just alienate the priesthood. He is so consumed by his own paranoia that he actively alienates his most lethal physical asset. Let's look at Jorgen.
The silent soldier. Jorgen is a legend in this world.
Yeah.
He was the last man standing at a famous, bloody battle called Theria. Because of his prowess, he was personally chosen by Minos to be his shadow, his personal bodyguard. And for a year, Jorgen has stood silently by the throne, swallowing his disgust as Minos orchestrates murder after murder.
Jorgen is bound by his oath, or at least what he thinks his oath requires of him. But I want to dig into his breaking point, because it happens in a really specific way. Wally is listening through another grate, positioned under a different part of the palace where the king is speaking with Lucian, his new captain. Minos is musing about a pattern he thinks he has found in his enemies.
A very paranoid pattern.
Yeah, he notes that the last few people he executed for treason were all born on a moon's day.
So his solution is horrifyingly bureaucratic. He asks Lucian, why bother with investigations? Why bother setting up elaborate accidents? Why not just outlaw being born on a moon's day entirely?
Insane.
He proposes preemptively killing anyone in the city born on that day of the week, just to save his guards the effort of investigating them later.
Okay, stop right there. That is completely irrational. If you arbitrarily kill citizens based on the day of the week they were born, you destroy your own labor force, and you absolutely guarantee a violent revolt. Why would Minos, who has been cunning enough to hold the throne this long, think this is a logical idea?
Because paranoia isn't rational. It is an ever-shrinking circle of perceived safety. Think about historical autocrats. They purge their own best generals, their top scientists, their most loyal party members. To the outside observer, it looks suicidal.
Right, like shooting yourself in the foot.
But to the tyrant, anyone who isn't entirely under their control is a threat. And eventually, everyone is out of their control. Minos has reached the stage of tyranny where he views the mere existence of the populace as an inconvenience to his security.
And it's the sheer, casual nature of this proposed mass murder that breaks Jorgen's silent complicity. Jorgen has spent his life believing he is a soldier of the king. But hearing a monarch propose the mass slaughter of children just to economize on his own paranoia forces Jorgen into a profound philosophical reckoning.
Wally realizes this shift is happening. The Minotaur actually sets up a secret meeting with Jorgen down in the labyrinth, and Wally gives this incredible, impassioned pitch. He admits he has been paid handsomely by the king, provided with a perfect maze, but he tells Jorgen that he has spent 6 long years saying goodbye to frightened people as he sneaks them out the back door.
Whoa.
Wally looks at the legendary soldier and says, "I should dearly like, just once before the end, to say hello to a true king."
That conversation is the crux of the ideological shift in the story. It's where the concept of loyalty gets redefined. Jorgen realizes that a soldier's oath is to the kingdom, to the ideal of Crete and its people, not to the flawed, mortal man who happens to be wearing the crown at any given moment.
Precisely.
Minos demanded personal worship, and by doing so, he actively destroyed the structural loyalty that actually keeps a government functioning. Jorgen says it perfectly. He says, if the word patriot means a single thing under heaven, it means the man who chooses his country over the one who is killing it.
Having crossed that philosophical Rubicon, Jorgen acts. He infiltrates a secret, locked-door meeting of the Senate of Crete.
The Senate is terrified. They're debating what to do in secret, in the dark. When Jorgen the king's lethal shadow walks in, they think they're all dead. When he tells them that the Minotaur is actually friendly, faking the deaths, and knows where the true prince is, they literally laugh at him. Senator Oxnaria thinks Jorgen has been dipping into the royal wine.
But Jorgen proves it. He perfectly quotes a highly treasonous statement made by Senator Pellinor from a previous, supposedly secure, locked-door session, a statement Wally had overheard through the floorboards.
The realization that hits the Senate in that moment is palpable. The very stones are listening to them. It validates Wally's espionage. By proving the king's reach is total, Jorgen paradoxically proves the resistance is real, instantly turning the terrified Senate into active co-conspirators.
And this begins the systematic dismantling of Minos' physical power base from the inside out. You have Jorgen quietly turning the guards at the docks, one careful, coded conversation at a time. You have Bryn, Eppo's friend from the inn, returning to Knossos and recruiting Galenos, his old mentor at the stables, to prepare a getaway cart. The loyalty of the guards and the common workers shifts overnight.
Galenos is great. He is 91 years old, remembers when the kingdom was fair under the old rulers, and basically tells Bryn to stop giving him a brave, rousing speech and just tell him what he needs to do. It shows that people are hungry to do the right thing. They just needed a spark to break the spell of fear.
Which brings us to the most ironic and frankly satisfying part of this entire deep dive. It is the exploration of how Minos' paranoia is actively staffing, funding, and building the resistance army right beneath his own feet.
This was my favorite realization. It is exactly like a massive corporation indiscriminately firing all of its absolute best talent to cut costs, completely oblivious to the fact that those fired, highly motivated employees are forming a rival startup in the corporate basement.
That is the perfect modern analogy. Minos is isolating himself into a corner. He issues a paranoid decree that he is not to be disturbed by anyone every afternoon so he can rehearse his revelation for the festival. Kella, the cook from the inn who has snuck back into the palace with the resistance, goes to the kitchens to verify this rumor.
And she runs into Nabitha. Now, Nabitha is a striver. She is purely self-serving, clawing her way up the kitchen hierarchy, brown-nosing the new regime. But even she recognizes that the current regime is violently unstable. Kalla offers her a cold, calculated deal. Secure her place as head chef in the new regime in exchange for her help right now.
And Nabitha delivers immediately. She physically locks Beaks, the king's little spy, inside a pantry to protect the plot. This is a vital lesson in autocratic power dynamics. It proves that when a tyrant rules exclusively by fear and reward, the moment the fear of falling outweighs the immediate reward, even his most opportunistic, loyal-seeming servants will turn on him without a second thought.
But the absolute best example of Manos building his own doom is the story of Phidon, the Trapwright.
Oh, this is a masterstroke of dramatic irony by the author. Minos hires Phidon to rig the royal bedroom and the secret antechamber with incredibly complex, lethal traps. We're talking needles in the bed frame hooked to poison that stops the heart instantly, falling heavy bolts from the door frame. Minos is incredibly pleased with the work. And then he turns to Phidon and tells him that because Phidon now knows all the secrets of the king's safety, he can never be allowed to leave the palace alive.
Dead men tell no tales, Minos says. And he immediately sentences this poor, brilliant old craftsman to the maze to be eaten by the beast.
But of course, the maze is run by Wally.
So Phidon gets sent down the dark stairs, expecting to be torn limb from limb, and instead he's greeted by an 8-foot minotaur offering him a cup of tea and a job in the resistance.
Wally has built a bustling underground town. This is the brain drain effect of tyranny. Every single person Minos condemns for petty offenses, a laundress for washing a banner until it faded, a herald for sneezing during a proclamation, a baker whose bread wasn't shaped perfectly like a lightning bolt. Wally eats them using his stage blood and then puts them to work.
And Senator Drusus. Condemned for talking too long in a Senate session, now he is running orientation for the newly deceased. Wally takes the condemned seamstress and puts her on making costumes for the infiltration. He takes a disillusioned guard and puts him on managing armaments. And when Phidon, the master trapwright, arrives, Wally is absolutely thrilled. Minos has literally handed the resistance the exact engineer who just built the king's personal security system.
It is the ultimate structural failure of paranoid autocracy. Minos believes he is purging the weak and the disloyal, cleansing his kingdom to make it perfectly secure. In reality, he is meticulously assembling a highly skilled, highly motivated counterforce, organized by a theatrical genius, operating entirely outside a surveillance apparatus.
While all this grim, high-stakes rebellion is brewing in the claustrophobic basement of Knossos, I was struck by how the author radically shifts the tone. Because at the exact same time, things are taking a wildly different, almost absurd tone up in the heavens. We have to talk about the divine comedy happening on Mount Olympus and the mirror portal gambit.
It is a brilliant structural choice. The author intentionally contrasts the grim, self-serious terror of King Minos, a mortal desperately pretending to be a god, with the petty, bored, deeply comedic reality of the actual gods.
Medusa, Alara the Blind Oracle, and the Cyclops, Psy, travel to Olympus on a flying ship captained by a harpy who literally never stops talking. They are going there to find out what is happening to Eppo, hoping the gods will intervene. But when they arrive, Olympus is just a bureaucracy of absolute boredom.
We hear about a dance battle between Hades and Dionysus that has been tied for centuries. It's finally sent to arbitration, and the binding legal judgment is that the time must be decided by a game of musical chairs.
Which they immediately appeal because Hades doesn't like the upholstery on the chairs. It's so absurd. And then you have Gus the Pegasus.
Gus runs a shady pawn shop business out of the divine stables called Heavenly Hooves Acquisitions. He fences confiscated statuary, which is heavily implied to be Medusa's past victims, selling them back to mortal temples on a heavenly shopping broadcast.
The gods aren't majestic. They aren't sitting around pondering the moral arc of the universe, or the justice of Eppo's cause. Medusa finds Zeus and Poseidon grumpily playing a board game called Tiles and Dice, casually gambling with mortal lives. Poseidon is dripping wet on the good carpet, complaining that his brand identity is suffering because people keep forgetting he also controls earthquakes, not just water.
But Medusa is incredibly shrewd. She knows how to play them. She doesn't appeal to their sense of justice. She leverages their sheer boredom. She offers them the ultimate entertainment, a live show of a mortal coup, watching a tiny pretend god getting overthrown. In exchange, she just wants to use Zeus's spy map table to look in on Knossos and check on Eppo.
The spy map is this magical tool of dark water that shows you anywhere in the world. But here is the terrifying realization of physics that hits Medusa. Zeus casually mentions that the table has a 2-minute delay because, as he puts it, light takes its time, even for me.
That one detail changes the entire stakes of the scene. The delay is a brilliant metaphor for the distance between the divine and the mortal. The gods are always a little too late to actually help. Medusa is watching the live feed in the water, seeing Eppo, Jorgen, and the team infiltrating the palace, and she realizes that they aren't about to walk into a trap. Because of the 2-minute delay, they have already walked into it. The trap is already sprung in real time.
The tension here spikes incredibly high. Medusa scrambles to find a mirror in Zeus's massive library to turn into a magical portal so she can jump directly to Knossos. She finds a tall silver vanity glass, she activates it, jumps through, and then the Cyclops, who is 12 feet tall, tries to follow her.
And he gets stuck. He hits the portal at speed and gets entirely wedged at the collarbone. He is stuck halfway through a magical doorway like a giant cork in a bottle.
It's the perfect blend of high-stakes, thriller pacing, and absurd physical comedy. You have Medusa on the Knossos side, yanking on his arms, screaming at Elara to push from the Olympus side, and Zeus and Poseidon just watch this happen like it's a sketch comedy show. Finally, Zeus decides to punch it up for his own amusement. He literally puffs a single breath of wind across the library.
That breath hits Elara, acting like a battering ram, and pops Sai and Elara entirely through the portal, shattering the mirror behind them and cutting off the connection to Olympus forever. It is divine intervention, yes, but not out of a sense of righteousness. Zeus just wanted to see what would happen if you forced the issue.
Which lands Medusa, a 12-foot Cyclops, and a blind girl directly onto the staircase of Knossos, covered in broken glass, exactly 2 minutes too late to stop the ambush from happening.
Which brings us to the climax in the throne room. This is where all the architectural and psychological threads we have discussed finally snap together.
Minos' grand trap has been sprung. He knew the resistance was coming because he deliberately leaked the rumor of his afternoon rehearsals. He has the 12 surrounding Eppo, Jorgen, Bryn, and Kelala in the center of the throne room.
Minos is absolutely gloating. He has proven his own paranoia correct, which is the most dangerous thing that can happen to a tyrant. He views this as his ultimate validating victory. He mocks Eppo. He dismisses Jorgen as a slave who was stupid enough to come back. And then, because he is a coward at heart who doesn't want to risk getting his own clothes dirty in a fight, he retreats.
Wally crashes through the rear door shouting, "It's a trap!" But it's too late. The circle of spears is closing. Minos slips into the secret antechamber behind the throne, the exact room rigged by Phaidon the Traprite. Minos starts doing this fake, weeping performance, begging his brother Eppo to come closer, playing the victim one last time to bait Eppo into the room.
And Eppo, despite everything, is still searching for some shred of humanity in his father's line. He takes a cautious step forward into the antechamber.
But just as Eppo steps forward, Medusa bursts into the room, and this is where she employs a brilliant tactic we saw earlier in the series. She uses the group hug tactic. This was first used by Wally in Book 1, and then by Lena the bird trainer in Book 2 under much more childish circumstances. Medusa wraps her massive form around Eppo and the others, shielding them. It is a profound moment because by doing so, she reveals her true, terrifying form to the human guards. She sacrifices her anonymity and safety to protect the group.
It perfectly contrasts with Minos. Minos hides behind his guards. Medusa steps in front of her friends. But even with her protection, Eppo's foot comes down. He steps on the 4th row tile.
The exact tile that triggers the trap Phaidon built, a mechanism snaps. A brass tube on the desk gives a sharp hiss, firing a cloud of pale yellow vapor. When I was reading this, my heart stopped. I thought Eppo was going to have to make a dark moral choice, or that the poison would hit Medusa.
But here is the ultimate twist, the perfect narrative payoff for everything we discussed today about the mechanics of paranoia. The poison doesn't hit Eppo. It doesn't hit Medusa.
The poison cartridge on the desk was loaded backward. Instead of spraying outward at the intruder, the lethal mist explodes directly backward, right into Minos' own face. He collapses instantly.
Minos is literally killed by the machinery of his own paranoia. Let's break down the engineering of this downfall. He doesn't die in an epic sword fight. He isn't struck down by a hero's righteous blade. He dies because he was so obsessed with absolute security, so arrogant in his control, and so terrifying to his own servants that he rushed the old Traprite. Phaidon was so terrified of the king breathing down his neck, threatening him with the maze, that a mistake was made in the frantic assembly of the mechanism. Or perhaps the king's own convoluted paranoid instructions caused the error. Either way, Minos built his own execution device.
It is the perfect thematic conclusion. Eppo doesn't have to compromise his morality. He doesn't have to become a killer to become a king. Minos' hubris literally backfires. He is swallowed by the very architecture of fear he constructed to keep himself safe.
It resolves the tension beautifully. Eppo wins precisely because he didn't play Minos' game. Minos isolated himself so thoroughly, alienated so many allies, and built so many traps that he was the only one left in the room to take the hit.
Let's look at the aftermath, because the epilogue provides some incredible closure. 30 days later, Eppo and Alara are crowned king and queen. The palace is covered in flowers, people are partying in the streets, and the government is completely restructured from the ground up. Bryn, the stable boy who helped organize the carts, is now the governor of the newly recognized territory of Pelagon's Retreat.
And they have completely overhauled the currency, which ties back to our earlier point about the semiotics of power. The money changers are passing around the new Pelagon doubloon. Minos' glaring face has been entirely removed, replaced with a geometric 8-sided coin. As one character notes, history did not often admit it had been wrong. Occasionally, it just melted itself down and tried again.
I love that line. And Lena, the 16-year-old bird trainer, has perfected her aerial signaling system. Her birds execute these flawless formations in the sky to transmit messages across the territory. It's a kingdom functioning on open communication and community, not secret surveillance, fear, and isolation. Wally is officially the director of the new Royal Theatre, complete with a custom trapdoor he named Bertrand.
But the author doesn't just leave us with a simple happily ever after. There's a brilliant, highly provocative final thought tucked into the edge of the wedding celebration.
Yes, two finely dressed older women are sitting at the edge of the courtyard eating cake, gossiping about the fall of the old regime. One of them leans in and says she heard Minos was being controlled from the shadows all along. She confidently states that it was an evil Gorgon whispering in his ear that drove him mad.
And the other woman just nods, takes a bite of cake, and says, "Well, that explains it." It is such a profound, tragic irony.
Even after a tyrant utterly destroys himself through his own blatant public cruelty, his own policies, and his own paranoia, history and myth immediately begin rewriting the truth. People are so deeply uncomfortable with the complex reality of human evil that they instantly choose an easy scapegoat. They blame the literal monster, the Gorgon, rather than admit a human king was just that wicked on his own.
It speaks to a deep psychological need. We desperately want to externalize tyranny. We want it to be a spell, a curse, a monster hiding in the shadows. Acknowledging that Minos built that architecture of fear all by himself, using human tools and human cruelty, requires us to acknowledge that any human is capable of doing the same thing.
Which brings us right back to our blueprint. The architecture of a tyrant isn't built with cursed stones or magic spells. It's built with ordinary bricks of compliance, silence, and fear. But as we saw with Wally listening through the grate, Hagatha mocking the king to his face, Jorgen breaking his oath to save his soul, and Medusa shielding her friends, that architecture only stands as long as the people inside it refuse to push back on the walls. The moment they do, the whole thing comes tumbling down on the architect's head.
Keep questioning the narratives you hear, look closely at the structures around you, and always pay attention to who is writing the blueprint.
A huge thank you to our listener for supplying these incredible sources for this deep dive. Go explore the structures in your own world, and we'll see you next time.
That's this deep dive. If this is your first time with Monsters Maybe, the books are available in paperback and hardcover on Amazon and Walmart, free to read on Kindle Unlimited, and an audiobook on Spotify and Apple Books. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, follow the show so the next deep dive lands automatically. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe and ring the bell. A quick rating or review helps more than you'd think. We'll see you next time in the world of monsters. Maybe.
Read Monsters Maybe by Wilson H. Bard, available at Walmart and on Amazon. Or read it for free with Kindle Unlimited.